welcome to Thursday. And on Thursday, we have a new topic that we're talking about, which is our book club created and
I love
brought
books.
to you. Yes,
I
he
love
does.
books.
Yes, he does. And he is the reason why I started taking walks, listening to audiobooks as I'm taking a walk because
Get your learning in, right? Like you can work on your body and work on your brain at the same time
Yes,
without causing
fantastic.
a
Ripple
drop
effect.
off for either one. Yeah.
Yeah, it's really cool. And so we are going to share a lot of books with you. It will probably be more Paul sharing. I do. But we're going to start. It's magic.
So many books.
You know what's super cool about books, though, is like how you create the story in your head, right? Like how the words are creating the movie in your head, and that's why it's so disappointing when you actually watch the film and you're like, that's not the character.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can I tell you my sad story
Tell
about
me your sad story.
books in my life?
Yeah.
It's in the grand scheme of life, it's not that sad, but it is sort of sad when you think about when you get the context of the story. So when I was a kid, when I was little, my family was we didn't have a lot of money. Like we weren't like impoverished, but we were basically living paycheck to paycheck and just getting by. And so what would always happen is if I was out with my mom and we were like someplace and I saw a toy, and if I was like, Mom, can I have that toy? She almost always would say, no, we can't afford that. But if we were someplace and there was a book and I was like, can I have that book? My mom would always say yes. My mom would never say no about books. Now, part of that was because they were cheaper than toys usually, right? But the other part was she knew the value
Right.
of reading for kids. And so I was sort of conditioned early on to learn, well, if I ask for a book, I'm going to get a yes. No,
Right, yeah.
I would add, yeah. So
Yeah.
I would always, and so I had my mom read with me when I was a kid, and then I became a better reader sooner because of that. And then she would always say yes. And so when I was a kid, I was just always reading books. And remember, I know I'm older than some people who may watch this, but when I was a kid, again, I lived in the country in New Hampshire. We had 3 TV channels. We didn't have cable TV. We didn't have any of the modern stuff we're all so used to having today.
Right.
So it was like read a book or go outside and play with a stick, basically, which was
So
fine
you and
as
I
a
are like
kid.
the same nerdy guys because I would take a book as well, and I would go into the bathroom and lock myself in the bathroom because like that's the only place where they wouldn't interrupt me. And my mom would
That's
always
awesome.
knock on the door and be like,
Bathroom
"Are you
reader.
with a book over there?"
So I read books like crazy all through my elementary school years. And then I even kept reading through my high school years. And then when I went to college, you know how college is, all of a sudden you go to college and everybody's making you read for them, like you're having to read a lot more than you did in high school.
Right.
And then I was a business major at first, and then I switched to being an English major, and I was behind because I switched late. So my final 3 semesters of college, I took 3 English classes each semester. So I took 9 English classes in the last year and a half of college. And so I was like constantly reading for my professors, and it like burned me out on reading basically.
Yeah.
So I became an English teacher who didn't read because I was so tired of reading, from reading, always having to read for other people. So what I did do, for some reason, I had this thing in my head where like I could read nonfiction, okay, but I got triggered whenever I read fiction. I never really enjoyed it like I used to anymore. And that lasted for the longest time. It lasted for years after college. And then finally, the Harry Potter books got me back into, because the Harry Potter books made me feel like I was a kid again.
Oh.
Isn't that cool? And so it looped me
Yeah.
back to when I had such good associations to reading, and it got me into reading fiction again. And it was a real blessing for
So
me.
you're
And I still,
one of the people who made her a billionaire.
yeah. And you know what? And I'm like, and she can have every penny of it because
It was fantastic.
they're fantastic books, and they teach kids important societal sort of notions about how we treat one another and stuff. And they're just beautiful books, I think. So,
Yeah. And so
but yeah, so I still, so now what I do is I read fiction books physically.
Yeah.
And I listen to nonfiction on audio, and that's sort of my way, like, to learn. Yeah.
Yeah, I like that. To me, reading is a luxury that, you know, like where you take your time and you really get into a story, and, you know, you have a movie in your head about that stuff. So I'm with you on the reading stuff, like, which is why I'm really excited about what we're sharing with you today. This is your book. You're leading us off, right? I hadn't even heard of this book, to be honest with you, until you told me about it. So let me tell you about it. So this book, it's called Trust Me, I'm Lying, Confessions of a Media Manipulator by Ryan Holiday. And why this book is amazing is because he is really calling out all the fakery and all the manipulation, and he's showing you how it's being done, like step by step. And you have two ways of taking this book, right? Because this is kind of like a manual of manipulating the media. And right, basically, I hadn't
thought of that. Now I'm like, whoa, okay, all right.
Right, and you read this and you go like, so I can write a story like that, right? And you can take that and it will make you rich. But like he's claiming, it will make you rich, but it will burn your soul. Right? Which is why he wrote the book. He goes like, look, back then, why are you...
Lots of money, burn my soul, lots of money.
They were like, you know, is heaven real? Should I even try to get there? So, but it's very interesting. So I was thinking of reading a few things for you there. And
yeah, like I'm curious to hear like an example. Is there a really cool example that he breaks down that I would recognize?
Oh, of like someone doing something?
Yeah, like that most of our viewers and me would recognize, like some...
So, you know, a lot of the stuff is like, you know, he's bringing down... So he talks about how journalism used to be, right? So used to be, you would go out and you would research, right? And they got paid to do the research and they looked at their facts. And then when you got something, back then there weren't many newspapers, right? Then you knew that was the truth. That was the news. But now, because we have the blogs and we have the internet and you have to pump like 5 stories a day, nobody has the time to do the research. And so they're relying on other people. And they don't really care. It's all about fear, right? Fear and something else that is horrible. Fear and something else. So what he's talking about is kind of like the delegation of trust. So let me read you that. Delegation of trust. So this cycle has roots in 2 journalistic habits, one from the new media world and one from the old world. When combined, they become a major danger. Ta-da. Reporters can hardly be everywhere at once. For most recent history, media outlets all use the same self-imposed editorial guidelines, so relying on one another's work was natural. When a fact appeared in the Chicago Tribune, it's pretty safe for the San Francisco Chronicles to repeat the same fact, since both publications have high verification standards. So the old rules were, number 1, if an outlet is legitimate, the stories they break are too. Number 2, if a story is legitimate, the facts inside of it are as well. Number 3, it can be assumed that if the subject of the story is legitimate, then the people are saying it are probably too. So these rules allow one journalist to use the facts brought forth by another, hopefully with attributions. This assumption makes researching much easier for reporters, since they can build on the work of those who came before them instead of starting from the beginning of a story. It's a process known as delegation of trust. The problem is, the web has its own innovation on delegation of trust known as the link economy. So basically, it refers to the exchange of traffic and information between blogs and websites. Say the Los Angeles Times reports that Brad Pitt and Angelina Jolie are splitting up. Perez Hilton would link to this report on his blog and add his own thoughts. Then other blogs will link to Perez's account and maybe the original Time source as well. This is an outgrowth from the early days of blogging, right? When blogs lacked resources to do much of the original reporting. They relied on one outlet to break the stories, which we then linked to and provided commentary on. From this came what is called the link economy, one that encouraged sites to regularly and consistently link to one another. I send you a link now, you send me a link later, and we trade off the job of reporting. The problem is, I'm going to skip a little bit. But as trading up the chain scam makes it clear, the media is no longer governed by the set of universal editorial and ethics standards. Even within publications, the burden of proof of the print version and newspapers might differ drastically from what reporters need to do to go live with a blog post. As media outlets grapple with tighter deadlines and smaller staffs, many of the old standards for verification, confirmation, and fact-checking are becoming impossible to maintain. Every blog has its own editorial policy, but few disclose it to the readers. So then he's sharing a story of Crane's New York emailed me to ask if American Apparel would be closing any of its stores in Manhattan because of financial crisis. No, I replied empathetically, no. So they found a real estate agent who didn't work for American Apparel to say they might. Oh, we might. And the headline was, American Apparel likely to shed some New York stores, even though my quote said we wouldn't. The Kane story was linked to and used as a source by Jezebel, and then by the New York Magazine's The Cold blog, and then by Rack New York, AOL Daily Financial blog, and it turned into a slideshow. 10 leading businesses shutting stores because of the downturn. None of the sites even asked him any questions. And even though he said no, nobody cared. A link later, for unknown reason, Cranes republished the article under a new headline. Unraveling American Apparel could put New York stores on the block. And so he goes like, the problem becomes that you're not reporting the news, you're reporting the reporting of the news, right? You're covering it's coverage about coverage. So he's sharing.
So it's like a game of operator, basically, right? Where stuff changes because no one's
actually checking it, right? And so he has a very interesting thing. He goes like, look, I don't know if you can see. Yeah. So you got what happens. All that's known by the media, all that's known to be newsworthy, what we're publishing, and then what spreads. So really all they care about is like not what happens, just what spreads. And that's what we're getting. And he goes like, so at the beginning of the week, at the end of the week, you're not better in knowing what happened but just, by reading every day what's happening, because everybody's just covering the same thing over and over and over again, and you're not getting nothing, right? So it's like an agent. And at the end of it, he says, so what now, right? Like he's basically gave you a manual at manipulating the media and getting some coverage. And he goes like, so where are we going from here? And the sad part is, he goes like, I wish I can tell you it's going to be good, but no. And he says,
well, when you say it like that, why is anyone going to want to read this book? Why should?
Because it's a manual, right? Because so two things. One, you start realizing how you're getting manipulated, right? And you start reading, like, you see the headlines when they say like likely, that's not real, right? Possibly, there's a rumor. So you start realizing like, okay, this is not a fact, it's someone's opinion. And you start reading the news with a different
well, that's a real key. I get that, is when they're injecting words like that in, then they're not reporting an observed fact. They're now speculating, and the news isn't supposed to do that, right? Like,
exactly.
Yeah.
And you can see where they got their information from, right? So like my cousin shared with me an article, a video of this guy reading papers. Look at this. I'm reading this. I just printed it out and I'm reading this paper, and it says that the coronavirus was it says that Bill Gates lost a trial in the US court and now they cannot vaccinate us if we don't want to. And yay, we succeeded, in our fight. And I'm like, where does it say that? What court? what court had a lawsuit against Bill Gates, and what did he just lose, right? And so when you go and you actually put you know, like exactly the words that he was reading, you find like a lonely blog out there.
Like just some lonely blog article. Yeah.
But if you
Yeah.
don't know, and it's this guy, look, here's the papers, we won.
Yeah, and people believe it, right?
And
People
you
just
went-
go,
yeah.
yeah, he had it. He was holding it in his hand.
Right? And he
Yeah.
basically printed the blog content. That's it, right? So there's no media. And so that's the problem. The problem is like you see, it's like, hey guys, we did it. We won. Here's the information. And you don't know to look for the manipulation in it, right? So that's the problem. That's one side of like, okay, look, everybody's lying to you, right? And here's how you can lie as well. And he's... right? And he
Here's
goes
how
like,
you
look.
can too. Yeah, it is a strange.
And he says,
Yeah.
look, I made a lot of money and had a great time playing with the words that make up the news. I exploited the laziness behind the news and the people reading habits. But from the abuse of abandoned shells came another one. Our knowledge and understanding is the final empty, hollow shell. What we think we know turns out to be based on nothing, or worse than nothing, misdirection and embellishment. Our facts aren't facts. They are opinions dressed up like facts. Our opinions are not opinions. They are emotions that we feel like opinions. Our information isn't information. It's just hastily assembled symbols. There is no way that this is a good thing, no matter how much I gain from it personally. And so in conclusion, he says, it's really cool. Of course, I know some of you might ignore this part of the book and use this as an instruction manual. So be it. You will come to regret that choice just as I have. But you will also have fun and it could make you rich. So to those of you who I have burned in this book, who I have hurt or taken aim at or criticized or made fun of, I'm sorry. Trust me, I'm lying when I say that. It's just that you deserve better. And the second you stop and walk away, the monster will start to wither and you will be happy again. I confess all I have confessed in order to give you that option. So it's just a very, very interesting book of like, okay, how can you come by and kind of like, you know, manipulate the media if you choose to, or understand that you are being manipulated by the media and what to do with that. So how do you choose to use that information? Up to you.
Well, that's always the choice, right? I think it's a lot to talk about there. I don't know if we really want to go.
We got 10 minutes, so go for it.
The bigger cultural issue. Well, it is. It's almost like I'm like, it's not worth going into because of how far. Like, it's not just about media, right? If we say media and we think of TV and newsprint and, you know, magazines and newspapers. But now I always think about where most of us spend our time now is social media, right?
Yep.
And it's the same thing. It totally impacts our usage of social media. And what in the book is described as the link economy, I'm like, on social media, it's the share economy, which is just a different version of linking, right? But it's even faster. Yep. And so it's even more of like, nobody seems to want to take the time to look up anything anymore, yet they'll share it.
Yep.
And they'll pass the lie along.
Yep. And they'll even do that, you know, by just reading the headlines of what you shared. So, like, if you link to an article that...
They won't even read the article, right?
They won't read the article, but they have opinions, right? And they tell you, and then you argue over something they never even read.
I don't know what do we do about that? I don't know what you do about that, because you're asking people to be more disciplined and like, what's in it for them? Like, in their mind, like, what's in it for me that I should check every single article that I click before I share it? And you go, well, accuracy, truth, like integrity.
That's part of the stuff that he's talking about here, right? Like, why does it work so well, right? Like, why the sensation and the lies and the dramatization and all that stuff, why does it work? It works because the masses don't care. They just want to be, so we became so... not jaded, but like, what do you call that when you numb, right? We became so numb with the
numb,
internet,
apathetic,
right?
Yeah.
There's so much so another person dies, you know, so like to get us to feel anything, it has to be so sensationalized that we're kind of looking for those hits, right? Like the dopamine hit of like, oh, this happened. Oh, this happened. So actually, I was watching a TikTok today with Leo. You know the one where someone puts a bottle of water in front of you and goes like, look in the water, and they splash in your face?
Yeah, yeah.
So this dad faked it with his son, where he goes like, the son is like, no, I know what you're going to do. You're going to splash it in my face, right? And he moves him away. And the dad splashes in his face, turns around, hit the wall, and goes like, oh my God, right? And drops a tooth. Like he hit the wall and broke his, right? And it's like, oh my God, look what happened, right? And then you think about this, and you go and you pause the video, and you're like, did he really break his tooth? Or did he like, cover it up? And I'm like, I think he covered it up, right? And then you look deeper and you look at the comments like, oh yeah, I see the black tape. But we would not, like the squirting of the water is like, okay, we've seen it already. That's not funny anymore.
Right.
Let's take it to the next level, right?
Yeah.
Oh my God, look, someone actually broke the... So we're getting like with TikTok especially, right? Like people are pranking each other and like there's a prank and a prank and a prank and a prank and a prank. And now you have to do like something major to get the likes and everything. And that's how you measure the success of your story or your video or something. So because we like looking up, it's so easy to manipulate us with like, look what happened here, look what happened here, no, look at here, look at here. And we don't care, we just want to be entertained. And so his story is like, well, if you want to ride the entertainment wave, here's a manual, right? And if you want to get off the entertainment wave, here's a manual. Right. And if you are riding the wave, just so you know, by the end of it, you'll feel hollow. So.
Well, that makes me think of like, remember I told you that it was probably 6 years ago, I did my own reality series and I published it direct through YouTube.
Right.
And when I did that, I had a meeting with the production company that I hired, the first meeting I had with them, and we went over like, okay, what are we going to do here?
Right.
And one of the guys with the production company had he'd been a cameraman for a reality TV show that was filmed out in LA. Mm-hmm. And so he had firsthand experience of how this stuff worked. And so when we sat down, he goes, all right, you got basically two options. He's like, you can hire multiple camera crews to just follow you around. Like they can work in shifts and they can follow you 24 hours a day and shoot everything. And then you can take all that footage and work it into a show. He said, or you can sit down with a producer and you can figure out what is the story that you want to tell. And we can plot it all out. And then we can just send one camera crew with you to shoot each scene and build that narrative that you want to build and make your show that way. And he's like, obviously, the second option is more cost effective. He said, and it's easier to produce, actually. He said, but the first option is an option. It costs more, and it usually is more challenging for putting the storyline together.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay. And I was thinking about it. I was like, well, listen, I'm a hypnotist, and if I have to represent my colleagues, and I can't do option two. I was like, if I do option two, and any part of it gets out as like, this didn't happen totally organically, it was staged, it's going to make all my colleagues look like they're fakers. Like if we fake anything, it's going to make them potentially look like fakers as well. And I can't do that to my colleagues. And he's like, all right, I totally understand that. He goes, I just wanted to give you all your options.
Yeah.
So what we worked out was sort of like a smaller version of option one, right? Where I took one camera crew with me at specific times, not 24 hours a day. When I knew I had something that might produce good footage, we scheduled it and they followed me. Yeah. And that way we kept the costs down. They followed me for really 8 days on and off. They flew with me to my shows and stuff, and we captured all. And then they took all that footage and we tried to work it into a reasonable representation of that period of my life.
Yeah.
It was cool. I liked it. It failed miserably. And it failed miserably because we didn't manipulate the storyline. We tried to document, right? and there wasn't enough drama. Like
Yep.
our culture is so drama oriented
Yep.
that simply documenting what I do and how I do it wasn't enough. Like if we didn't have something crazy happening, people tuned out. And we were only doing like 10 to 12 minute episodes. We weren't even doing a full 30-minute episode.
Yeah.
But that's how tuned everyone is to there needing to be like super duper drama, you know?
But you know what? It's who said that? I believe Tony Robbins said that. He goes like, look, if you go to a movie, right, and you start watching a movie, and it's a happy family, and they're just sitting there and having dinner, and everybody is fine, right, and then they're going to sleep, and then they wake up in the morning, and they're having breakfast, and it's bye kids, bye, it's all great, and they go to school and just study, and they come back, and you're like, is anything gonna happen here?
Yeah, right? Yeah.
Why am I watching this, right? So that's why we have the story arc, right? And that's why we have the hero's journey, and that's why we have the stuff, which is very interesting because now that I am doing something similar, right? We're going to be a mini documentary of the entrepreneurial journey and coming from Israel and going to the military and the Air Force and backpacking in South America and doing Krav Maga. Okay, so what's the conflict? What's happening here? So I will be talking to a storyteller who looks at all that stuff and goes like, well, this is how we're going to tell the story.
Right.
Otherwise, it's like...
Otherwise, as much as you go, you had a cool life, people on TV are going to be like, why should I care?
Exactly.
It's weird how it doesn't translate, you know, like, yeah.
So, you know,
That's
so
cool.
there's going to be some Krav Maga action. Already talked to Caleb. It's going to be featured nice.
Nice.
But, you know, I was like, I don't care how we film it. I just want it to be like Creed, right? Want to look awesome.
Well, you better get your act together then. You got to look crisp.
I know. And Caleb is like 6 feet. And I was like, well, maybe we do drive-by attack or something. Right? With a gun. Well, you know, we'll come up with something that looks cool. That I know how to do because I am a level 3. I am an orange belt. So
there you go.
Yeah, so we're not faking. We're just choreographing. And with that, let us tell you again, this is the book. If you want a manual to manipulating the media, this might be your book. Or if you want to know how you are being manipulated, this might be your book. It's very short. It's very interesting. Really tons of anecdotes and how-tos and stuff like that. And this book is, have to say that one, was published in, so we have the right time, 2013. And sadly, nothing has changed since. So, this stuff's still applicable. Yeah, so.
Yeah, I think it's probably going to stay that way. So.
I know. So be wiser, be smarter, and figure out if you want to use this or not for your own thing.
All right. First book review under our belts.
There you go. We will see you tomorrow for the Friday finish of this week. Thank you. Be well. And bye-bye.